Today we are learning Le'ilu Nishmat Avram ben Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Avraham. So, like I was actually saying before I started the recording, the topic of dating is something very, very interesting, and there's so much material on it. And one of the things that is very interesting when you look at the sheer volume of what something sells and what people are looking for. It tells you a lot about the topic in itself, the idea in itself. When you look in let's say for example, Torah Anytime, you want to know what a popular topic is. Dating and marriage is always such a popular topic. You have other emunah is also very, very popular, and there's a reason why these things are popular, because there is a need for it. When you go and you look at the secular world, and the secular world, we know the divorce rate is through the roof. Unfortunately, even in the religious world, the divorce rate is very, very high. Secular world is higher still, but still it's high across the board. So you think the people that are married, that are sticking through it, at least they have a decent marriage. When you look at the statistics, it was the statistics that I read that shook me to the core. It shocked me so much. When you have people that are married, what percentage of people that are married do you think they feel like they're happily married with the right one? Let's call it a zivug, let's call it the one, whatever terminology you want to use. How many people do you think are the ones? What percentage of people do you think that they're married already, that they are the right ones? So let's try to clarify this question. So you have the divorce population, which in the secular world, what is it, 60, 70%? Maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 70% if I'm not mistaken. You have a very, very high divorce rate. So then you're left with somewhere between 30 to 40% of married couples. Out of that 30 to 40% of married couples, what percentage do you think they are happy? They feel that they married the one, their zivug, the one that was intended for them, and they're very content in their marriage. So the scary statistic was that over 70% of couples in this survey, again, this was not Jewish, so I have to put it out there, but still it's still a scary fact. Over 70% of the couples say that they did not get the right one. They're married to their wife, to their husbands, and they feel that they did not get the right one. I don't know if they're still looking for the right one while they're with the right one. That is a very, very scary number, because if you think about that, there is 100% of people, right? 50% of them already you have that are divorced. Then of the remaining 50, and I'm being very, very liberal with the numbers over here, out of the remaining 50, over 70% of that 50, so you're talking about what? You're talking about 20% of people that are actually got into relationships, or feel less than 20%, feel like they're found the right one. Like what's going on over here? Like that is such a bad statistic. That is such a bad outcome. So when you think of these numbers, you realize that people look around. People are getting ready to get married. People are getting ready to improve their marriage, or thinking about dating, whatever it is that they are in their stage in their life, and they look around and what's going on over here. So it's no wonder that everybody's turning to these types of topics, whether it's dating, whether it's marriage, whether shalom bayis, divorce. All these types of topics become very, very attractive because people feel like they need to learn more. And I can't tell you how important that is. That is so important to go. Before you go and you want to excel in something, you have to learn about something. So like I was saying before I started recording, I believe I was saying this, if I want to teach about a certain topic, I don't just take one sefer and I learn it and then I teach from that. I try to take everything that I have on that subject, everything that is available on the subject. I have here, there's no joke, if I could turn around the camera, I have here a box of svarim just on tefillah. This is, I literally spend hundreds of dollars on these svarim that I have to prepare for the classes. That's one of the topics that B'ezrat Hashem that I want to speak about. When I did my emunah class, I probably went between 20 to 40 svarim. And that's underestimating it, really. And I go through it and I compile and I combine different topics, because you want to know a topic, you want to be able to teach a topic, you want to understand a topic, you really have to study it very, very hard. You want to excel in marriage. You want to excel in dating. I don't know if that's a good thing. You don't want to be a good dater. You want to be a good, spouse is where you want to focus. But if you want to know how to date, you want to go and you want to learn about these things. So there's a great need for these topics, and it's really great that people are actually listening, learning, and trying to grow from this topic. But at the same point in time, even though there's a need and even though it's very great, you could see how much we're lacking. How much we're lacking in it. You look at the olden days. When I say olden days, I don't know, Holocaust and prior, time. So before World War II, there was a lot of Sfarim written. But how many Sfarim were written on marriage? You had Sfarim on Musar, you had Sfarim on Halakha, you had different Sfarim on different things. But the topics that are coming out, you look at the Sfarim store today, if somebody from 100 years ago will walk into a Sfarim store today, they would be like, what's with all these topics? What, we need Sfarim to prove God? Like, are you kidding me? Just look outside. We need a Sfarim to go and to help in marriage? Like, what do you mean? How do you not do everything for your wife? Like, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. But in our generation, there are certain things that are lacking, and there's a need for these topics. The reason why I prefaced this class with that introduction is that this topic, even though it's so important, it's very, very dangerous. And I feel it's very, very dangerous. And I'll tell you why. Over the years, Baruch Hashem, I was able to speak to a lot of people, and either through phone calls, text messages, emails. I have to actually put it out there. I know people have emailed me. It takes me such a long time to get back to emails. If the best way to contact me, really, if you want to get an answer quick, is only through phone call. But so I do apologize with the delay in the emails. But Baruch Hashem, I got to speak to a lot of people, and I get to hear what's really going on out there. And when you're dealing with these type of topics, and there's a reason why I was another reason why I was hesitant not to give a series on like dating per se, is that people take there's a very a polarized end to these topics where people receive it. So you have some people that they look at these type of topics, they study it so hard, and they take every word so seriously, and you should, but they take it every word so seriously, and everything comes to, if my person that I'm dating doesn't check off every list of what this rabbi said, or this book said, or this help book said, then it's not for me. They take it so seriously, and they're not able to go with anybody because no one can meet up to the expectations that they're reading in these books of what a good spouse should be. And on the other hand, you have people that they listen to all these classes and they study all these topics, but they don't for a second internalize it. They don't for a second think about it while they're dating, and they don't care about it. So you have these two drastic, radical differences in people. Of course, you have the right one, which is in the middle, but you have the two radical differences. We have somebody that takes everything that we're going to speak about tonight, and if the person that I'm dating doesn't have every single thing, must be it's not the one for me. And the answer is no, not necessarily. And then you have someone on the flip side that says, it doesn't matter. The person can have everything wrong, and they still end up getting married. So we have to be somewhere in the middle. We have to know the important questions that we need to ask, the important questions that we need to focus on, but at the same point in time, we have to realize that no one's perfect. No one's going to hit up exactly what you're looking for and what you want. The secular term of love is something that, I guess it bothers me. I guess I could use that terminology. It kind of bothers me, the way that people speak about it, how they say they fall in love, they fell out of love. You have a couple, and they say, how did you meet? So, whatever the craziest story is, I was at a baseball game, and he came down on a parachute with flowers and champagne, and then, I don't know, everything from outside of like the craziest stories, and then how does that end off? And I just fell in love. And then you look at that couple 3, 4, or 5 years down the line. What's going on? How come you guys are in therapy? How come you guys are not happy with each other? He says, well, things were going okay, and then we started drifting apart, and then we fell out of love. The secular terminology is falling into love and then falling out of love. The problem that I have with falling. Falling is an accident. That means that you didn't intentionally want to fall in love. You accidentally fell in love. That's not the way that love works according to the Jewish concept. It's not like you accidentally love somebody. You have to work on it. You have to earn it. It's not something you just fell in love. You didn't fall in love. You fell in an accident of the way that person treats you makes you feel happy. So really what you're really saying is that you love yourself. You love the way that person makes you feel. So you don't love that person per se. Well, maybe you do. I shouldn't say that. But you don't love that person per se, but you really love the way that person makes you feel. So the way that the secular world deals with it, and the reason why I'm saying the secular world is because unfortunately, we're very, very much heavily influenced by it. You speak to people, yes, maybe it's maybe more on the modern, modern side. And you have people that they go and they say, I didn't fall in love yet, so I don't love him yet, I don't love her yet, so I can't go and I can't get married. So that the focus is not there. The focus is, the goal is to eventually be in love. Fall in love is a very, very bad terminology. Falling is accident. You don't want to be accidentally falling in love. You have to go. You guys can't hear me? It's going in and out? I don't know. I don't have...
It was freezing in and out for a bit.
Are you good? Are you good okay now?
Right was good.
Okay, good. Okay, I apologize. I didn't know. I'm on my internet connection. It looks fine, but I can't... Yeah. If it does freeze in and out, I apologize. There's nothing really that I can do on my end. I'm going to check to see if I'm connected. But the idea of happening to fall in love is an accident. And people very mistakenly think this while dating, that they have to fall in love. You don't have to fall in love. You have to earn the love. You have to work on the love. In this week's Parashah, it says in the 24th chapter of Devarim, the first pasuk, it says, Ki ikach ish isha. A man takes a woman, uva'ala, and he was intimate with her. V'haya im lo timtza chen be'enav. And it found that she didn't find favor in his eyes. Why? Ki matza ba ervat davad. He found in her some sort of something wrong with her, immorality speaking, something wrong with her. And then what? The pasuk goes and finishes off. It went and he gave her a get. He divorced her. The question that is asked is the terminology that the Torah uses here is very, very interesting. Because the Torah works very, very hard. I shouldn't say that. The Torah doesn't have to work hard. God wrote the Torah. The Torah goes and adds extra words to make it that it comes in a nice lashon, a very sophisticated, a high level, a pure language. And we see this, for example, in Parashat Noach. In Parashat Noach, when Noach had to go and get all the animals, it says in Noach, in Bereshit, in chapter 7, verse 2, it says, Mikol behema Torah, of all the pure animals, tikach lecha shiva. You have to take 7 of the pure animals, the Torah, the pasuk tells us. Ish v'ishto. And then it says, Umina behema asher lo Torah, and from the animals that is not tahor, not pure. The question that the Mefarshim ask is like, I don't understand. The Torah is so particular, so meticulous on every single letter. Forget about the word. Every single letter that is used in the Torah. So how come it says, V'chol ha-behema, umina behema, asher lo Torah, from the behema, from the animals that are not tahor? That's an extra word. Why doesn't the Torah just say, Mikol ha-behema tmeah, of all the animals that are tameh? And then you would save a word, and then you save another letter on the Torah for a tameh, 3 verse 4 letters. So why does the Torah go and add extra letters and say words and say the animals that are not pure? Meaning, the Torah goes and says, take 7 animals of the pure animals, and then of the not pure animals, we take 2. The question, it should have says, of the pure animals, you take 7. Of the impure animals, you take 2. Why does it have to say the not pure? Every letter makes so much of a difference. Every letter we analyze it. The answer that Mefarshim tells us is that the Torah goes and uses a clean lashon naki, a clean verbiage, to go and say, didn't even want to use the words of tme'ah, of impure, but rather it's better to use something that is not pure, meaning that you go focus more on the positive as opposed to the negative. And the Torah goes extra, bends over sort of to speak backwards, to go and make sure that it's a lashon naki, that it's a very, very pure verbiage. So if so, how come the pasuk in this week's parasha, in Davarim, in Parashat Ki Tetzeh, it goes and says in the 24th chapter, the first pasuk, it says, Ki yikach ish isha, a man takes his wife, uva'ala, and he's intimate with her. That's why such a crude language? Why not to use more of a pure language? And the answer is, there is a lesson that we learn from this. And the lesson is that if you go into marriage, and if you go into marriage for one reason purpose only, for yourself, for your own self-gratification, then it's going to end in a disaster. This man goes and the pasuk says that he took a woman. But what was the next word that he says after that he took a woman, that he married a woman, and he was intimate with her? He had one thing on his mind, and that was the only thing that was on his mind. That's what he wanted. He was focusing on his own self-gratification. He was focusing only on his own needs. Somebody who focuses on their own needs, they're not going to end in a positive way. The pasuk goes on and says that he found something wrong with her, and he ended up divorcing her. Because if you focus in a marriage of only about me, it's not going to end well. It's not going to end. You have to focus about the other person. That's why the pasuk speaks of the way that it speaks in the Parashat Ki Tetzeh. And not go and bend over backwards to go and use a more of a different language, because there's a lesson in every word, every letter the Torah goes and tells us. The lesson in Parashat Noach teaches us how much we have to work on our pure speech and always focus on the positive, even with the negatives. The lesson that we learn from Parashat Ki Tetzeh, when a person goes and marries somebody for only his own needs and own desires, teaches us that if you do that, if you do focus only about yourself, your end is going to be what? Your end is going to be in a divorce, unfortunately. Now, there's something very, very interesting. When you look and you read stories and you study about the period of the Holocaust, you realize people back then did not focus so much on themselves. Even though they had the biggest need to focus on themselves, they didn't focus on themselves. But as we go and we move further and further away from the Holocaust, it seems that we more focus only about our eternal self. One of the things that I tell people, you walk in the street and you find out that there is a stain on you, or your zipper is open, whatever it is that's going on, and you feel so embarrassed. You have to realize nobody cares about you. Everybody is so self-absorbed with their own issues, with their own problems, or with their own ego, with their own stuff, that even if they see something weird, odd, different about you, they think about it for a second, and then they go back to their own problems, back to their own issues, back to their own fantasies and dreams and whatnot that they're going on in their head. But back when it was in the Holocaust, it was a little bit different. There was a very, very famous story that is said over by Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz was the CEO of Starbucks. I believe he was one of the founders of Starbucks. So he, along with a group of businessmen. Now, when you speak about a billionaire going with a group of businessmen, you got to know that these group of businessmen are very wealthy, very powerful people. They went and they were visiting Israel, Eretz Israel, and they had an opportunity to have a meeting with the Rosh Yeshiva of Mir Yeshiva. And that was Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel. And they go in to meet with the Rosh Yeshiva, and they had to wait. Like everybody else. Just shows you the godless of, the greatness of, somebody who, like as Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel. You have somebody that's, a few billionaires are sitting in your waiting room. What does anybody think? Okay, you stop what you're doing and you meet the billionaires because they're coming in to speak to you. But no, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel had more important things than speaking with these billionaires, and he had to finish whatever he was doing, and then he went and they came in. Now, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel was, unfortunately afflicted with a very, very severe case of Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease have with them tremors, these uncontrollable shakes. And when these businessmen came and they saw the rabbi, they came into the rabbi's room and they saw him shaking, they felt bad looking at that, at the rabbi. Like obviously there was some sort of, physical, defect going on over there, and they didn't want to look at the rabbi. So they started looking down and avoiding the looking at the rabbi. Rabbi Nosson Finkel got, up, and he slammed down his fist on the table, and it was a loud bang, and all of them jumped up. And he goes at them and says, "Gentlemen, look at me." And everybody's looking at him. All these billionaires are looking at him. And he goes over to them and he tells them, he says, "What is it that we learned from the Holocaust?" So they initially thought that this was a rhetorical question. The rabbi asked it. "Well, okay, fine, I'm waiting for the answer." But he wasn't. He was looking at them. He was waiting for them to answer it. When they weren't answering, he pointed at one guy. He called on a guy and he says, "Tell me, what was the lesson that we learned from the Holocaust?" So the guy was like, "A lesson from the Holocaust? I can tell you about the stock market, the Holocaust." So he's thinking for a second and he says, "You know what? You know what we learned? We learned that we will never, ever forget what happened." And Rabbi Tzivika is like, dismisses him. And he looks around the room. And now all the other businessmen realizes that, wait a minute, now the rabbi's going to call of us? What happens when you're in a classroom and a teacher is about to call on you? You avoid eye contact because you think all of a sudden if you don't see them, it's like back when we were little toddlers. If I don't see them, they don't see me somehow. See, they're all avoiding eye contact. And he looks around the room. He calls about another billionaire and he says, "Tell me, what is it that we learned from the Holocaust?" So this person goes and he says, "You want to know what we learned from the Holocaust? We learned that we will never ever again be a victim. We will fight, we'll have an army, we'll have the ability to go and fight back. And it's never going to happen again." And again, Rabbi Nosson Finkel said, "Not the answer that I'm looking for." And he looks around the room and he says, "Gentlemen, you want to know what we learned from the Holocaust?" He says, "In the Holocaust, people were transported by the worst possible way. They went and they were in this rail car where they would put cattle inside. There was no even holes windows or places that you would be able to breathe. There was a little crack in the wall. They would take turns taking fresh breaths and then circulating that and making some sort of hakafot over there that everybody could have some fresh air. Everybody was crammed together for who knows how long. And then they finally got to their destination. And it wasn't the Bahamas. It wasn't Cancun. They went to there and they realized that it's either labor camps, they got to work to death, or they are going to the crematorium, or that it's death camps. They weren't going to anywhere good. And they finally got off these rail cars and they're going and they're getting ready to be lined up to be shipped off to wherever they're shipping off to. And the Nazis played this sadistic game. They went and they started splitting the families apart. They're not going to keep the families together. So husbands and wives got split. Daughters got separated from the mothers. Sons got separated from the fathers. And then the Nazis started counting them. And every sixth person got a blanket. Now this was the cold European winters. One blanket for every sixth person. Now it was that person's blanket. And that person could decide what he wants to do with that blanket. The question that everyone had was, am I going to take that blanket and keep myself warm? Or am I going to go and share that blanket with 5 other people? Says Rav Nosson Finkel, says these people had every reason to go and keep the blanket for themselves. They lost their homes. They lost their jobs. They lost their financial standing, whatever it is that they had. They lost their families. They lost their health. They lost their dignity. They had nothing. Zilch, nada. They were gone. You know what they had? They had one blanket. Now they had this one piece of item. This one thing that would keep them warm at night. What are they going to do with that blanket? It says Rav Nosson Finkel, you want to know what they did? He says, you don't want to know what we did with this blanket? He says, we took this blanket and we shared it with 5 other people. Now he looks at all these wealthy people. And he goes and he tells them, each and every single one of you, you are blessed, you got a blanket. God gave you a blanket, God blessed you with panasa, with wealth. The question is, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to keep that to yourself, or are you going to pass it on to 5 other people? When we do things in life, we have to stop and think for a second. Do we do it for us, or do we do it for the other person? Do we only think about ourselves, or do we think about somebody else? The Holocaust taught us to stop for a second and think about the other person. Even though you don't have a family, you don't have your dignity, you don't have food, you don't have nothing, but you're going to think about somebody else. You do chesed. Do you think about what I am doing for this person, or what I am getting from it? You go, you visit a sick person. Do you go and you realize that I am doing something that's going to give me eternal reward? That's something that it's really what I'm doing when I'm visiting a sick person is I'm really gaining more for me than for the sick person. Or you go and you wait for the thank you that sick person should tell you. Can't tell you how many times you go and you visit a sick person and you grow so much you gain so much from that visit. Recently I went and I visited a neighbor of mine. Unfortunately, was in a very, very terrible car accident. Broke his pelvis in both areas, had pins sticking out in all directions. Was in excruciating pain. What happened was a fire truck hit his car. Fire truck blew a red light and hit his car. Was sitting in the hospital, has to go through a rehab, was in a nursing home at this point in time. Young, healthy guy. You go and I went and I visited him. And I can't tell you that I went out of that nursing home. I went in thinking, okay, I'm gonna go visit a sick person, visit someone in the nursing home, do a mitzvah, something that you need to do. Very, very good thing to do, and strongly recommended for everybody else. But I left over there thinking, I thought that I am coming to help him. I realized that he came to help me. I didn't even yet to tell him this. You want to know how this person spoke? This person has a business. This person has a family. This person has everything going for him. And then what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu went and basically put him on bed rest. Took his pelvis, shattered it, amongst other things, and put him in the hospital, then putting him in the nursing home. If you would be able to hear how this person spoke, every other sentence, Baruch Hashem. Every other, thank God, thank Hashem. You know how much you gain from that? You know how you realize that you suddenly have a bad day. Be like, oh, I can't believe this is a bad day because you missed a meeting or whatever. I couldn't close a deal. This is somebody that went and was in a severe car accident. And all he could say is Baruch Hashem. All he could say is thank you, God. You want to know what a chizik that is? I came and thought I was doing him a favor. Really, he was doing me a favor. You go and you do something and we say, okay, we're doing for somebody else. No. That's not the correct way. When you're doing something, you're really doing something for yourself. You're really doing something for yourself. But, a big but over here, that you cannot think that way. When you do something, you have to think that you're doing something only for the other person. When you go and you give charity, you give tzedakah, don't wait for the thank you. Don't wait for the blessing. Because you want to know something? That guy, that poor guy that you just gave money to, did more to you than you did to him. Really, what you should say, what it really should be, is that you should say thank you to him. That's really what should happen. The point that I'm trying to get to is that when we do something, we have to realize that we're doing something, even though we're gaining from it, our focus needs to be the other person. The lesson that we learned from the Holocaust, the lesson that we learned was that when we have even nothing, that we have to think about somebody else. Even when we're doing something for somebody else, we have to think that for that person. When you get into marriage, your focus has two options. Either it's going to be all about me, or it's going to be all about my spouse. It's going to be all about the other person. Nowadays, we're becoming very self-centered. Very, very much focused upon ourselves. We have to stop daily, I would really say hourly, if we could. And stop for a second. And think not what I could do for myself, but what could I do for somebody else? The word love in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, is ahava. The root of ahava is to give. You want to know how to love somebody? It's not about how that person makes you feel. Yes, it's related. It's not about what that person does to you, even though yes, it's related. It's not about all the things that go in your, it's about one thing and one thing only. It's about how much you give that other person. You want to love that other person? Give that other person. The more that you give, the more that you love. And that is why the greatest love is a love from a parent to a child, because a parent just constantly gives a child. It just non-stops. You have a mother that goes and wakes up non-stop for the baby. Non-stop, every hour wakes up for the baby. But you want to know what the mother does every time that she wakes up for that baby? She hasn't slept in 9 months, 10 months. The baby is always waking up. She has to feed her, you have to change, you have to do it. What does a mother do? One of the first things, she picks up the baby and she gives the baby a kiss. Let's imagine that you have somebody coming into your office or whatever it is and just banging on your window and on the hour, every hour, and you get out and you be like, thank you for banging on my window. What could I do for you? And yet what you think that eventually you get so upset, so angry at the child, like, give me a few minutes to rest. But yet the mother picks up the baby and just gives the baby a kiss and hugs the baby. I love you. How could you love her? How could you love this baby? How could you love this baby boy or baby girl? How could you do it non-stop, draining the life out of you? How can you do it? You want to know why? Because you're not stopping to give to the baby. And no matter what, the more that you give, the more that you will love. The focus of marriage is what can I give the other person? And you'll soon see why this is such an important introduction to what we're about to speak at. To understand this, I must have said this story before. If not, I should have said it like 1,000 times because it's a great story. It's a short story, but it's an amazing story. The Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky was one time was at a wedding and he needed to ride home. So if you want to go, and I utilized this once before, there was a gadol that I needed to speak to. So I found out that this gadol goes and drives. He has a driver and drives him back and forth to the yeshiva, to his house. And I said, you want to know when I want to speak to this gadol? I want to speak to when he's in the car. He says, why? Because he can't run anywhere. He's going and he's driving. I know that I have a minimum of 5 minutes. And if I know the driver well, I said, listen, take the long route. I have a few questions. So I went to a certain Mekubal in Eretz Yisrael, and I knew the driver. And I asked him, can I tag along? I have a bunch of questions. I need to speak to him. And he said, fine. And and I got along, and I was literally like one after another, like asking him questions in the car. And the concept of when you have a gadol in your car, you realize the godless of that is. You realize that you're able to go and you have a one-on-one appointment, an opportunity over here that you'll never. Where else can you have that? Where else can you have a 20-minute conversation with a gadol? The gadol is very busy, always going, but it's in the car. What is it going to do? It has to talk to you. You're driving. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky needed a ride home. Of course, everybody jumped to the occasion. Everybody wanted to give him a ride. One boy wanted to go and give him a ride. And he goes over to the rabbi or Shiva and he says, listen, I can give you a ride. So the Rosh Shiva looks at the boy and he says, what car do you have? And the boy is thinking, he's like, you want the make and model? Like what is it that you're looking for? Like, what do you want? He's like, no, what type of car? He's like, I don't know, it's a 4-door sedan, it's a 200 horsepower. Like, I don't know, what is it? He's like, you know what, show me the car. So the boy said, fine, not a problem. He pulls the car around. The Rosh Yeshiva, the rabbi, walks into the car, sits in the back seat. Sits in the back seat, leans back a little bit, waits a few seconds and says, you know what, yeah, you could take us home. So the boy says, rabbi, he says, you got to help me out over here. It's like, what does it matter? What's going on? Like, he couldn't even begin to ask the question, like what you doing? Like, what's going on? So the rabbi goes and says, listen, he says, you're taking home me and my wife. My wife is going to be sitting in the back for a long time. I'm going to be sitting in the front. I want to make sure the back is comfortable. My wife has a bad back. My wife has an issue. So I want to make sure that she has a comfortable ride home. So you want to know how a gadol thinks? You want to know how somebody who is great thinks? They don't think about themselves. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky couldn't care about if he had a Lexus, a Kia, or a 1920, I don't know, whatever, Toyota, whatever, a Ford, whatever, one of the first cars. He couldn't care less about that. But you want to know what he cared about? He wanted to make sure that his wife is comfortable. Because he didn't think about himself. He thought about his wife. He thought about his spouse. He thought about somebody else other than him. That is the focus that we need to have. And that is why something very interesting. The first bracha we recite under the of the Sheva Brachot is Shahakol bara lechvado. That everything was created for God's glory. Now the question that we have to ask is, what does that have to do with marriage? That you start off the Sheva Brachot. How do you start off? Everything was created for God's glory. What does that have to do with marriage? What does that have to do with being married? This is the first bracha. This is what they have, the Chatan Kala have to hear. Says Rabbi Twersky. I knew that I was going to be quoting it. That's why I was asking the Twersky family over here. So said Rabbi Twersky. Says, you want to know why? The first bracha is Shakol Ba'al Chado, that everything was created in God's glory, in Hashem's glory. It says, if a couple goes into marriage thinking all about my glory, all about his glory, all about her glory, all about how this marriage is going to make me feel, it's going to end in disaster. So you want to know how you're supposed to get into marriage? You have to get into marriage realizing that everything that God created, Shahakol bara, that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, lechvodo, for his honor, including this marriage. Everything is for the honor of God. It's not for me. It has nothing to do with my glory, my happiness, my satisfaction. It has to do with one thing and one thing only, and that's God's glory. Because when you go into marriage realizing the focus is what? The glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The glory of somebody, something, some entity else other than yourself, that is going to lead you to a successful relationship. The line that I say again and again, and it's probably every single class I give about marriage, I would probably say this line. And if not, I should, because it's such a great line. It's not about finding the perfect one. It's about becoming the perfect one. People in life are always looking for that perfect person. Forget about looking for the perfect person. Focus on yourself, on you becoming the perfect person. You become that perfect spouse. The Torah goes and speaks about many, many things that are good. Every day the Torah says that everything that God created, and it was good. Everything God created, everything was good. One of the first times that the Torah speaks about that, it's something that was not good. It's in Bereshit chapter 2 verse 18. It says, "Vayomer Hashem Elokim lo tov hiyot ha'adam levado." It is not good that a person be alone. E'aseh lo ezer kenegdo. I will make him a helpmate against him. God goes and says it's not good that a person is alone. The first time that it says that not good, it means that a human being is not supposed to be alone. I remember one time I was speaking to this girl, didn't want to get married. Thinking, from all the books and the lectures and the things and the people that I spoke to, not want to get married, must be some sort of problem. Okay, how was your upbringing? How was your psychological, asking all these, everything was fine. Girl just didn't want to get married. Still to this day, don't know why. I have no idea. I have no idea the reason for it. Well, maybe she did and she didn't want to tell me. I don't know. Just didn't want to get married. The Torah tells that it's not good for a person to be alone. A person has to be with somebody else. And that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu, what did Kadosh Baruch Hu go and say? That I'm going to make for him ezer kenegdo. I'm going to make him a helpmate opposite him. Kenegdo, against him. We think that we want to find that perfect person. Everything on our checklist, got to check. Everything that we have, everything that we want everything to be checked. That's not the focus. The focus is not just what we're checking off. That you think that if on paper everything is good, it must be that everything is good. It's not true. It's not. Ezer kenegdo means that not somebody that matches everything that you wanted. It's somebody against you, so to speak, the literal translation. Meaning that it's not somebody that it's perfect for everything that you wanted. It's somebody that's going to help you grow. Somebody that you could grow a life together. It doesn't have to be perfect on all areas. Now, that was really an introduction. So that was really like a 39-minute introduction that we had. So we'll begin with some questions. Really the focus was to deal with some questions. And we'll start off with questions It looks like I'm going to have to split this up into 2 classes. But we're going to start it off with questions, not about the other person, but questions about myself. Questions that I have to ask. You know, we come into a dating situation and we ask a lot of questions about the other person. Does he do this? Where does he work? How is his family? Does he take any medication? Blah, blah, blah. We have a bunch of questions. But now we're going to start off with asking questions that we have to ask ourselves. Now, I have to preface this with, like, even if you're failing in every single question that we're going to be dealing with, that we're going to be asking, that doesn't mean that you're not ready for dating. And this is where I started with the introduction, how you have to be so careful and what you're saying and how you're saying it, because people are going to go and be like, okay, I don't have all these checks. It must be I'm not ready to get married. Must be I'm not ready to date. And that's wrong. That's not the correct way. You actually should be speaking to your rabbi, your mentor, your rebbitzin, or somebody, your parents, to see if you're ready. And if you're ready, then you should go out, even if you're lacking in some of these areas. But if you are lacking in some of these areas that we are about to speak about, that is what you need to work on. I'm going to start off with number 1, even though it's not number 1. And it's not in any particular order. I didn't make this any particular order. But these are things that are important that you have to ask yourself before you start dating, or while you're dating, or even while you're married. These are just things that you need to work on if you answer negative to these questions. Number 1, can I accept criticism? If someone tells me I'm doing something wrong, how do I react? Now, I have to very, very much put a very big asterisk. That doesn't mean that the other spouse is supposed to criticize you. Absolutely not. That should never, ever happen. You're not supposed to criticize the other spouse, ever. That's not the goal. But the question is, can you accept criticism? Not can you give criticism, but can you accept criticism? Because why is it so important? That shows that you realize that you're lacking, and that shows that you're able to grow. Because if you're a type of person that can't accept criticism, that any fight that would ever happen, any disagreement that ever happened, anything that you may have done or anything wrong, you're not going to be able to handle that. You're not going to be able to relate with that. You're not going to be able to deal with that. You have to realize, do you have the ability to be flexible? Do you have I want to say self-restraint, but I won't. To explain this one is, I've spoken to, this is a long time ago, I believe it was a woman, was dating a guy, and she was saying, the guy had some issues, and she was like, he has to accept me for who I am. I don't ever plan on changing. I don't know why I'm speaking like that. Whatever. I don't ever plan on changing. This is who I am. This is who he has to go and accept me for who I am. And I respond, I'm like, you are 100% right. He has to, accept you for who you are and never expect you to change. But you should not accept who you are right now, and say that you're never going to change. What type of mindset is that? What type of mindset is that you never want to grow? You want to stay where you are right now? You have no interest in changing? You want to get any uncomfortable position, the situation where you're going to have to go and change? Our purpose in this world is to grow. Our purpose in this world is to change. Yes, the other spouse should never want you to change, but are you flexible enough that you realize that you have the ability, that need to go and change? Do you have the desire to grow? It's very, very important, and that's why this is important. Am I flexible? It's not, am I flexible in change that I need to make? It's not because that person is going to need to change you, or should change you, or would ever change you. The answer is 100% no. But let's speak about reality. Reality is that, how do you accept criticism? Are you able to grow? Are you flexible? Are you able to change something? Or are you so set in your ways that you're not going to change? One of the reasons, this is my own opinion, I don't know if it's right or wrong, that when I deal with older singles, you would think that as you get older, you would be more flexible, more lenient on what you're looking for, more willing to change, more willing to grow. But I see that the opposite, which is mind-boggling to me. If you're 40 years old, never been married before, why are you so particular of everything? You realize this is not working out for you. So start focusing on something else. But some people are just not, they don't have the mindset that they're able to change. They're able to go and become something else of what they were sort of pushed into, or whatever corner they built themselves up to. The next question you have to ask yourself is your patience. And by the way, I have to, this is not things that I just, thought about, be like, hey, this is a good thing to, no, these are things that I went and I looked up and I read from different, people that are well versed in this subject. Actually quite a few of this was actually from Rabbi Victor Miller, from different therapists, of what they say, what's very important in relationships. Do you have patience? Patience is very, very important. Do you have to get everything that you have right here, right now? If your spouse asks you to do something, do you demand it happening right now? That's going to end in disaster. Do you have the ability to have that patience of okay, if it didn't happen yet, maybe it will happen? You want to know how? You could test yourself if you're dating and you have patience. How anxious are you when you're dating and you feel like you have to get married so badly? Do you have to say, listen, if God didn't send it to me yet, okay, I'm going to do my hishtadlut. I'm going to do the effort that I need to do, and then God will send me when it comes. Where is the level of your patience is so important in relationships? This is also a subcategory, and that is self-control. Do you have self-control? It's not only self-control where somebody's going to say something and you want to fight, you have such a good comeback back to that person. Even in your desires, do you have self-control? Do you have the ability to hold yourself back and be like, listen, I want something, but I didn't get it yet. You asked your spouse for something, and they didn't do it yet. Do you have that self-control to go and say, okay, fine, let me wait? Or do you blow up right away, and which leads us to the next thing, how is your anger? Do you have anger problems? Now again, I have to go and stop these questions right here. Even if you checked, even if everything I just said, you're like, criticism? Oh no, I can't take criticism. I am not flexible. I do not have patience. I do not have self-control. I have major anger issues. Must be I'm not ready to get married. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying these are things that you need to work on. Maybe if you have all these issues, yes, you might not be ready to date, but I'm not telling you that. You have to speak to somebody else. What I'm telling you is these are things that you have to focus on. There are certain character traits that are very, very important. Very important in a marriage. And these are things that you want to get into it. We spoke about the statistics in the beginning. You want to go and you want to build yourself. Forget about finding the perfect one. Become the perfect one. So how is your anger? Do you blow up every single time? I got to say this, it's only from speaking to people. I don't know why, but it appears to me that I see that more men have more of the anger issues than women. But interesting, with the women, this is something that I just picked up. Again, I don't know if it's true or not. Maybe it's just the people that I speak to. They have more of a need for having they want something. It has to be very instant. I don't want to say instant gratification because it's not that. So there is different, I pick up on different pros and cons of the different genders of what they have. And it might just be the people that I spoke to. I don't know. It's just, whatever it is, it's just something that's interesting. So some of these things might speak to you. Some of these things might speak to somebody else. Anger is huge. If you have an anger problem, that is, your kids is going to suffer from that. Your spouse is going to suffer from that. Your relationship is going to suffer. Your business are going to suffer from that. Everything is going to suffer from that. So if you're someone that gets angry, you have to go and you have to work on that. And by the way, everything that I spoke about until now, from criticism to flexible to patience to self-control to anger, you want to know what is a one underlining thing that could answer all these questions? What you have to focus on, one of the many things that you can focus on, I should say, is anivus, humility. Humility would go and almost take apart all these things and mend you into the type of person that you would be able to accept criticism. You would be willing to grow because you realize that you have something to grow. You would be flexible because you would think about somebody else. What am I? I'm nothing. You would have patience because you have humility. Okay, somebody else is greater than me. I have to go and speak. You'll have self-control. Be like, how could I go and have desire? I'm a nope. So you have so many things. Anger, forget about it. Of course you're going to have that. There's so many underlying character traits that if you focus on, you work on, it would sort of has like its roots in a sort of a different character trait. So anivas, humility, is a huge thing. That's why you open up any Musar Sefer. What does it speak about? Almost every Musar speaks about humility, anivas. The next question is, can I see the glass half empty, half full, or empty? I should not see it half empty. Are you a type of person that is a pessimist? Do you always focus on the bad? The reason why I say that is if you're dating somebody and you're always focusing on the bad, you're always going to find fault with everybody. So can you see good in people? That doesn't mean that you should be blind to the red flags and blind to the problems that people have. Or, you should obviously see it. But where is your focus? Can you not get... There's somebody that has 1,000 good qualities and 2 bad qualities. Yes, sometimes those 2 bad qualities outweigh the 1,000 good. That is true. But where is your focus? Where is your focus? Is your focus on the good or is your focus on the bad? And again, very important. Do not ignore the bad. You're dating somebody, you got to look for the bad. You got to look for those red flags. But where is your focus? Next thing is very, very interesting. This one, I found it very, very interesting that this even came into the, to the picture, is, are you a dependable person? I would never even think to put this onto this, top, in this category, but it's very interesting. Are you dependable? Meaning that, do you follow through when you will say you do something? Are you dependable? This is very, very important, especially for men in the dating world. Very, very important for men, but also important for women. Are you somebody that if you say something, you're going to do it? Do you have the ability to follow through your words? The next question, we're going to finish off soon because it's a little bit late. Next question is, are you an honest person? Are you, somebody that is honest not only with other people, but also with yourself? Meaning that you go and you stretch this out a little bit, is, are you okay with not getting everything that you want? Meaning that not everything has to go my way. Now, of course you're going to say this, and for many, many people, I would go through this, I'd be like, criticism? Of course I can accept criticism. Flexible? I am so flexible. I've been doing splits since I was a little kid. Patience? I have patience from today until tomorrow. Self-control? Come on, I'm the king of self-control. I could literally be a monk. Anger? I haven't gotten anger, since Y2K. You could check off, but the question really is are you honest with yourself? Really? Do you not get angry? Do you really accept criticism? Are you really flexible? Do you really have patience? Ask your best friend. Ask your ask your best friend that is able to give you the truth. Do you have that honesty that when you're asking these questions, you can really come and say, you know what? No. I can't accept criticism that well. I need to grow. I need to be able to become more flexible. I need to have more patience. I have to go and work on my anger. We have to realize that honesty is not only being honest with other people, it's also being honest with ourselves. It's also being honest of where we're holding in our life. What type of person are you? You want a perfect spouse? Where are you holding? Are you perfect? Where do you have to grow? Where do you have to fix? And finally, the last one, I believe this one I added myself. I don't know if I saw this anywhere. And that is, am I willing to stick things through? In marriage, very unfortunately, sometimes you have little fights, little arguments, little disagreement, and the second there's a little disagreement, forget about it. It turns into a huge thing, everybody leaves, storm out of the house, go into, everything turns into a huge thing. Do you have the ability to stick through the bad? Stick through the good is very easy, but do you have the ability to stick through the bad? You're getting into marriage. Now, of course, there are times where divorce is needed, and divorce is warranted, and is necessary. But, majority of times it's not. Majority of times, do you have the ability to stick it through? You're getting into a marriage, do you have the desire to make these things work? These are the questions that you should ask yourself before you start dating, while you're dating, or even after you're dating and you're married. And if you fall, in the negative in any of these are things that you have to start focusing on. And the truth is there's more. There's a lot more to this, but it seems like we're going to have to split this class into two. Because there's quite more to speak about, and I thought I'll do this in one class. But B'ezrat Hashem, I guess we'll speak about this next week and continue on this topic. With that, we'll open to questions. So we have the first question is, how does one practically work on humility? So the first thing that I would say that a person should work on humility is by learning Musar Sfarim. Musar is very, very important, and focus on humility. And take those things that you learn and bring it into, your reality, and take it into actuality, really do it. One of the series that I do want to do down the line, B'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, only with God's help, is that I want to do a series on character traits. So that is something that I do, B'ezrat Hashem, want to speak out eventually, and that's something down the line. But the first, they tell you, open up Musar Sfarim and start working and reading and learning about humility and how to grow in it. Okay, next question. I strongly believe in committing to someone and putting as much effort needed to make a marriage thrive. Excellent. What do you suggest I look for in dating a partner to recognize if he has the same deep feelings? Even if he says it, he might not firmly believe it or try his best. So that's very good. That's very true. So it actually happens to be that next week, I thought I would get to both of them. So what we spoke about now is questions I would ask myself. Next week is questions that I would have to look at the other person and see where the other person is holding. So this is a type of question that, how do I know where the other person is, if the other person has that strong conviction to make these things work? And the answer is, it's very, very hard to ever tell you that this will, that he believes that, and he could say that. How many people go and say, I'm never going to go to sleep angry. I'm never going to go to sleep, how much does that actually work out? You say it. There's a lot of things that you say. It's very hard to judge the sincerity of this topic, that how much a person would be willing to make it work. You want to hear something very interesting, is that the people that I feel when I speak to them, the people that really want to make the marriage work, that I feel the strongest, are the children of divorce. The children that have been through bad relationships. They say, I don't want that. I want to make sure that it works. Now, I'm not saying look for somebody from a divorced, family. But that's something that did stick out to me. That you have those type of people that really they want to make it work. So you have to go and try to feel out the person. And maybe we could speak about this a little bit more in depth in the next class, B'ezrat Hashem, on what I need to look for in my spouse and how do I know that they have the ability to really stick it through. It's not an easy question. It's really learning about the character trait and building through it. And you're not going to get that until after you're married. The minimum that you could do is at least ask them and make sure that they are willing to go through with it and really, really, make it work. Okay. I thought there'd be more questions. All right, looks like that is the final question. All right, thank you all for joining. Thank you all for coming. I really thought I would be able to do this in one class, and I did not even think that, we would have, okay, we'll split it up into two. But I don't plan on making another class after this on dating for, on this, in the next, at least few weeks, I guess what to say. So if there's something that you want me to speak about, and there's something that you want me to do, you could call me, text messages to me, and I can add it into the curriculum for next week's class to really address it. Because usually we have a series and people have 20, 30, 40 classes to be able to ask a question, so they could definitely, bring it up later. But now, B'ezrat Hashem, I'll do one more class on this, and then we'll take a little bit of a break on this subject. So, yes. Okay, so there was, here it is. There's another question. Okay. Why is it bad to rebuke your spouse if you really care about them and you can do it in a respectful manner? You know what? We're going to speak about, I have a lot to speak about this. I really have a lot to speak about this. Yes, spiritually, there is a lot that I have to speak about it. We're going to save this for next week because there's a lot because the next week is going to be about the other person. So I'm going to put it on the list to speak about for next week. I hear your question and I agree with your question, but we will we'll speak about that B'ezrat Hashem next week. And if you still have any other question, please. I know you messaged me privately, so you know who you are. Text message me, or you can call me after we close the class and we can speak if you still need it. Any other?
I want to know your opinion on something, but first, the Dr. Tversky computer person, could you check your chat? I sent you something. I've noticed, I'm 53, and I've noticed people I know after 25, 30 years get a divorce because they just grow in different directions. Like when they were 19, 20, 21, one felt that they needed some guidance and the other one guided them. And then over time, that person started to resent the person that was guiding them, or the stronger person because they grew up. They grew out of who they were as a younger person. And at 40, 45, 50, they changed. They just grew in different directions.
Yeah, that's very, well, we're going to be speaking about that, B'ezras Hashem, about next week regarding the growth. You're talking about spiritually or just in general?
Just in general, just like, at 19, she needed somebody who was stronger and that would, keep her guided and going in a direction. And then he was kind of, used to guiding her and being the stronger person. Well, at 40, she was like, I got this, I don't need somebody breathing down my neck and, guiding me every second on what to do during the day. And people just, they grow like that. They grow in different directions. Sometimes the roles change as people get older. I'm
actually writing this down. You're very right on it. And that is a fault in each other. They're supposed to go and they need to go and really need to focus on their relationship and how they work on it. So it's something that we'll speak about. I'm happy that you brought it up. I actually wrote it down. I'm going to speak about it B'ezras Hashem, next week, because that's a very, very good point. People do grow apart, but and sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's beyond the ability of the relationship, but many times it's the way that the relationship was built up, and they should have been growing together, and they didn't for whatever reason. So maybe we'll speak about that next week. Thank you, Shira, for bringing that up.
Yes.
Somebody wanted my contact, so I'm going to put my number on. Oh, nope, I'm sorry, I put it at there. I accidentally put it just to one person. Hold on one second. Let me put that back. Okay. Next question. I am working on myself a lot now while I am single, and I want to reach so many more levels. Does that mean Hashem will send me someone who is also in the middle of growing, or someone who is higher than me? I want someone on a higher level. Okay, so that's a great question. You're growing, which is excellent, which is great, and you should be growing, and the focus is to grow. The very important concept is not to wait until you get to the level that you want to get, because our whole life we spend growing. But once you feel confident in a certain level, this is really, we'll speak about this next week, especially in the Baal Tshuva world, that's when you have to start, you have to start dating. But yet, your focus is growth. So you should go and find somebody that is willing to grow. That's what you have to go, and you have to really have to focus on growth. So find somebody that's willing to grow. That's very, very important. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, am I allowed to ask a question now?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I have a quick question. I was dating for maybe the past year, and I would say I'm pretty young. Recently, I dated a person that I felt was really super spiritual and was on a greater level than I was, and I really admired that. And I decided to take a pause on dating and to grow more in my spiritual self so that I can become a type of person that somebody on that level wants. So I was talking to a really close Rebbitzin of mine, and she told me, she's like, stop putting dating off. Just don't push it off for another year and say that you need to keep growing, because no guy wants a perfect girl. She's like, where you are now is good, but don't set it off. And for me, that was super confusing, because I'm like, I want to become a better person, but at the same time, I'm being told no guy wants someone so perfect and so good.
Right. So first of all, I definitely agree with her, even though the Rebbitzin, so I'm happy that you told me that, because if you were told me I need to grow, and that's a big spectrum. That could be somebody who doesn't keep Shabbos to start keeping Shabbos. Then I would say, yeah, wait off dating until you start keeping Shabbos, because it's two different people that you're speaking with, two different people that you're going to be in the dating realm with. But if you are a good from person and you want to become a better from person, to a higher level, I wouldn't necessarily say to stop growing. You should always focus on growing. But if you know that you need to grow on X, Y, and Z, then if you begin your journey, If you begin, so let's say you want to grow in like your tefillah, your tznius, and let's put something else over there. And you what?
In your lashon, like.
Okay, in the way that you speak. So those are three things that is great. That means that you're starting to grow tonight. You're starting to grow in your tefillah, your tznius, and your lashon, and the way that you interact. So these three things already now you started working on them. That doesn't mean that you have to be like, okay, let me wait for somebody. No, right now you already started working on them. That this is where you're holding. Meaning beforehand, the way that people think is that I have to wait till I get to the level that I want to get to, and then I'll feel comfortable. Not necessarily. The second that you have a projection, the second that you are like, okay, this is where I want to grow, you're already like 20 steps ahead of where you are yesterday. You're already on the path. So that is already something that you could say, okay, listen, I'm not there yet, but I know I want to get there. I am motivated, the type of person that I'm motivated, I'm going to be able to get there. So I want to find a guy who has the qualities of X, Y, and Z as well. I wouldn't necessarily say to put a pause on dating for that if that's where you are. It really depends on what is the area that you want to grow. And I really shouldn't have said tznius, because that is a big area. If somebody's, not to get into a whole wormhole on it, but the reason why I say it, that I shouldn't have said tznius, is that most women want to grow in tznius. But most women want to grow in tznius for the past 75 years of their life. And it changed it's a very, very hard test. So that might be okay, like I have to and it really depends. So if you have somebody that's wearing pants and be like, eventually I want to wear a skirt, or somebody's wearing a skirt and eventually I want to wear a skirt below the knee, or I'm wearing a skirt below the knee, but I eventually want to wear tights, or I'm wearing tights, I want to wear, everything. So it depends on where you're holding and where you actually see yourself happening. There's growth, and then there is the desire for that to happen. So if let's say somebody goes and decides, you know what, I want to go and I want to beat tznius. So then they will throw out all their pants, all their not tznius clothing, and the next day they're tznius. So they're already there. They might have temptations, they might have desires, they might slip a little bit here and there, but overall, they went from here all the way up to here. They really, really jumped up. But then you have somebody that says, okay, I want to work on my tznius. Okay, so I'm going to read some books, listen to some lectures, and maybe I'll thinking about throwing away my not tznius clothing. So there's different really levels on it. But if you're somebody who is serious about growth and you took actions of that growth, then you're consider yourself more than halfway there. And you shouldn't stop. You should continue with the dating.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, next question we have here. So let's say you have reached the level that you wanted to reach, dated, etc., and you still haven't found your spouse. What should be the next plan of action? So Rabbi Victor Miller goes and says, people go and they ask him for a skula to get married. He says, everyone's looking for the skula. He says, you want to know a skula to get married? He says, the best skula to get married is daven. Daven and daven. And don't daven when you're already older. Obviously, if you're already older, you daven. You start davening when you're younger and you want to get married. That's when you start davening and davening and davening and davening. You want to know what you should do. The next plan of action is daven. But if you're dating and you haven't found your spouse yet and you've been dating for a while, this is very important. You've been dating for a while, then I would definitely say to speak to somebody, because it could be that you're picky on certain items. And we're going to be speaking about B'ezrat Hashem next week on different things that our people are picky on. So it's very possible that is a issue that needs to be dealt with. You have dating coaches, you have rabbis, rebbitzins that go, and you could definitely speak to somebody. If you've been dating for a while and you're still not married, definitely reach out and have that humility to be willing to be flexible and change and willing to grow. Very, very, very important for somebody who is very particular in certain matters and they're willing to, be more flexible and grow and less picky, to make things more blunt. Okay, next question. This may be another question for next week. What is the ratio or perspective to looking for qualities in someone else? In regards to his interest in his own personal growth, his interest in doing Hashem's will, midos, capabilities of raising family, doing chesed, there's so many important things to look for. So that threw me off. What do you mean by ratio? But yes, this is definitely a question for next week. So maybe send it to me privately, and I will clarify that question more, and I'll focus and I'll put it more into focus into next week. This week is more focused about yourself. Next week is going to be focused about the other person. So we will probably speak about that, but I need clarification on that to add it to next week's information. Any other question? Oh, we have one more. I heard that if someone has been dating for a while and hasn't found a spouse yet, they have some type of character trait that's blocking them from finding their zivug. Is this true? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If someone's been dating and they couldn't find them, it could be. I mean, it's very likely what you're saying, yes, that it's a character trait, but it's not always. Sometimes people are doing everything right and it's just not the time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, decided that it's not yet time for them to get married. So it's not necessarily that they have something that's wrong with them. A lot of times, yes, they have to, be more lenient on certain things. And there was a certain Rav that asked a certain person, like, how many people you dated? And this person said like 100. It's like 100. He says, if I would have dated 100 girls, I could have found at least 70 of them that were worthy of getting married. So like, what can't you find so many? So many times it's our own fault in ourselves, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's just, things that have just been way off, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want you to get married yet. So it really depends on case by case, but definitely somebody that's been dating for a while and needs to speak to somebody and say, listen, and be willing to say, listen, maybe I'm being too picky. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Can you please guide me, help me, change me? I don't know, that's the dangerous word. Somebody would say that. Okay, looks like that was the last question. So with that, we will end off. And I will say that anybody that does want me to speak about anything in particular, please send to me as soon as possible so I could add it on to the next week's class and topic. You could the best thing is to text to me, or you could technically email to me. I'll try to look at the emails this coming up week, even though I'm bad. So you could email me or text me. I'm Bli Neder. I will try to add it onto next week's class. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for coming, and have an amazing, amazing Shabbat, week, year, and marriage. End off with that. That is the topic after all. All right, all. Have a great, great night.